This is the time for Dhamma discussion, questions and answers. So this is for you. So please, whatever doubts or questions that I can helpfully talk about, please don't be shy. Yes.
First of all, I feel very privileged to be in this group and to be hearing your thoughts about meditation. And the question I have is about this particularly walking meditation. And the way you set it up was that ask this question that how does. So you set it up saying that ask this question: how does walking meditation tells me about my life? So because I was very tired in this walking meditation, and I kept asking myself, what does this walking meditation tell me about myself or my life? And the question I kept getting back was, maybe you're tired, maybe this is breaking a routine, but nothing more than that.
Yes. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that when the experience is, oh, I'm feeling tired, it is what it's teaching us is that the body is not self. I can't just make the body do what I want it to with no negative consequences. So it is giving a teaching about not being the controller. The body is not self. Also about the nature of the body in its aging process. I was noticing myself that the body gets more tired easily. So my noticing that, my first thought was jarapi dukkha, aging is dukkha. The aging of the body is dukkha. I'm not 25 anymore. I'm not 55 anymore. So these are important things to consider. Often we go through life assuming that we're in command or in control, that we can do what we like, we should have the right to do what we like. But when just a simple little exercise like this, like walking up and down, just for 45 minutes, this is just to be meeting that experience, like, oh, I'm tired. Oh. So there's a limitation that comes from the body. There's a limitation that comes from the mind's attitude. Look at that. I can't just make that go away. So if we observe that and reflect on that, it's pointing to that aspect of the Buddha's teachings, which we'll go on to more tomorrow, which is rupang anatta, the body is not self. Vedana anatta, feelings are not self. Sanya anatta, perceptions are not self. Sankhara anatta, mental formations are not self. Vijnana anatta, consciousness is not self. So, and as the Buddha in his second discourse, when he was talking about this insight, or helping his 5 friends to develop this insight, he said, can it be had of the body, be like this, don't be like that? And they said, no hetam bhante, no, you can't do that. You can't tell that a place like this would not exist. If people could say, oh, to their body, don't get sick. The Balaji Nigrodaram would not be needed, because people would say, oh, my body's not the way I like, be different. Don't be like this, be like that. And if you could just will your body to be different, then then it would show that the body is subject to the decisions of a self, of an individual who has control. But what the Buddha points out is because you can't have of the body be like this, don't be like that, and the body is subject to affliction, is it therefore appropriate to say of the body, this is me, this is what I am, this is my true self? So they say, no he tang bante. No, that's not the case. They agree with the Buddha. So those are important insights. So that was the kind of thing that was coming through my mind when I was also noticing that walking for 45 minutes is the feelings of being tired can arise. So those are the kind of reflections that came to my mind. So to me, those are very useful insights. Does that make sense? I'm not sure how familiar you all are with the fundamental Buddhist teachings. I'm presuming to a certain degree, that like the teachings on the five khandhas, the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, the teachings on anicca, dukkha, anatta, kind of assuming that's familiar ground. Is that correct? Please say no.
A little bit. A little bit.
A little bit. So this retreat is for you, it's not for me. So me just sitting up here making noises is of no value. It's not meaningful for all of you. So let me know if things are not familiar to you or they need some more explaining.
For a beginner like me, when doing walking meditation, the eradication of obscurations is ignored, I think.
Could you say that into the microphone so everyone can hear?
While walking meditation, while doing the walking meditation, the eradication of obscurations is being ignored.
The eradication of obscurations is being ignored. I don't know what you mean.
Because sensations I am not observing. I am not able to do my mind to guard entire body, into entire body and other things I am not doing. Just I am observing the soul of my feet, that's all. What is happening at the soul.
Well, I'm not sure what's the issue, because if you're paying attention to the present moment, you're using the feeling of your feet touching the ground, you can see where your mind starts to wander, where the mind takes hold of an idea or a feeling or another thought, and then grasps that, takes hold of that. And so the purpose then is to, or the approach to a meditation that's most helpful is then to notice the mind grasping, to see the dukkha that comes from grasping and to let go. So the teaching of the Buddha doesn't just revolve around Veda, doesn't just revolve around feeling. It revolves around, in particular, seeing dukkha and the ending of dukkha, seeing how grasping works, whether it's grasping a thought, grasping a memory, grasping a color, a sound, as well as a feeling. So that the approach of this kind of meditation, kind of things I've been talking about yesterday, is about learning to recognize where the mind gets distracted, where it grasps different things, and to see the connection between grasping and dukkha, and dissatisfaction, and how when the grasping stops, then the dukkha stops. So the use of, say, sitting meditation, observing the breath, or walking meditation, observing the feet, that is essentially designed to help bring the attention into the present moment and to notice where grasping occurs. So if the mind is grasping the thought, I can't let go of all the obscurations this way. That's grasping a thought, right? If there's a thought, I can't abandon all the obscurations doing this. That's a thought. If the mind grasps that thought and believes it, then there's dukkha. If it lets go of that thought, then the dukkha stops. Yes. Does that make sense?
I have two questions with regard to walking meditation, since that is very important to us. One is, where should our gaze be? Where should our sight be while walking? And these should be focused only on the sole of the feet, or on any sensation in the body, or on the sound of my foot. Where should I focus?
Well, the Buddha's recommendation with walking meditation is to have the eyes downcast. So it's about the words he uses in the sutta is the length of a plough in front. So if you are, it's about 2 meters, so between 2 and 3 meters. So if you are steering a plough behind a water buffalo, that kind of distance, as long as a plough is 2 or 3 meters. So the eyes are downcast, but you can also have a sense of the other things that are around. And the precise object that you pay attention to, it's not. I don't feel it's important to be too specific. Just because the point of paying attention to the footsteps is to bring the attention into the present moment. There's nothing particularly sacred about your feet, or about the feeling of touching the ground. Or with the breath, you can. We're in India. People have written encyclopedias of the significance of the breath, philosophical, it's a metaphysical symbolism of breathing and so on. But in the Buddha's teaching on mindfulness of the breath, it's not to do with any kind of particular symbolic value or metaphysical issues. It's really simply because it's the breath is an aspect of the body. The body is always in the present. So and also the breath is not exciting. It's not interesting unless your breath is obstructed, so you can't breathe. So it takes effort to pay attention to it, so that it's a convenient and natural way to help bring the attention to the present that requires the quality of intention and effort on the part of the practitioner. We can easily pay attention to the present if we're angry, if we're excited, if we're frightened. So people go to scary movies or exciting movies. It's very easy to pay attention to the present. If you're upset, you're angry, you're afraid, you're excited. But then that kind of concentration is very dependent on that state. So when we take a plain object like the footsteps or the breath, then it means there needs to be more personal effort, more of a clear intention to train the mind to be with the present. Then that quality of attentiveness is more adaptable. So then you're training your mind to be attentive to the present, regardless of whether things are interesting or not, whether they're threatening or not. So that this is a very helpful skill to be able to pay attention to the present, to notice your own feelings, your moods, the people around you, the situation that you're in. And so that in a concentration exercise like this, so personally I don't find it too helpful to be very specific about exactly where you should focus on the breath or exactly how you should focus on the footsteps. But rather, each individual can find for yourself what is the easiest way of focusing on that, attending to that, and then with the purpose being, it's simply a way of sort of keying your attention to the present. It's like locking into the present moment. It's like your phone getting a signal. Okay, we're locked in. We're here. We've got a signal. That makes sense? And there was the third question you had. You could speak into the microphone, so
should we just pick one path and walk up and down? Or can we go?
Yeah, it's good to, if you're looking for the perfect walking meditation path, it's always the other one. So it's good to not go for the perfect walking path, but a good enough one. And so it's okay to change, but it's also like I like to walk in the shade. So I changed to where I was walking because it was a bit sunnier in the afternoon than it was in the morning. So I shifted to a shadier place later in the afternoon. But it's important to develop the quality of santuti, of contentment. So, okay, this is good enough. Maybe there's a better walking path somewhere else, but let somebody else have it. This one's okay for me.
Your holiness. Your Holiness, we are advised to concentrate on our breath as we seek to develop concentration. Concentrate on our breath, inhaling or exhaling. If we concentrate on our breath, that concentration is held, and so on. And we are advised that if for any reason, because the mind flirts, do not become too upset with that. And if you persist, and if you are tenacious, and if you don't give up those flirtations of mind, that mind will eventually give up, and so on and so forth. And that concentration will begin to break. Your Holiness, what would be your comments on this? That we need not feel upset with the flirtations of mind. Instead, be tenacious and persist in doing what we have set out to do.
I would. I've never been referred to as Your Holiness before, but so that's not a. It's not necessary to be quite so respectful, but I appreciate your sincerity. I would say, yeah, it's important to be tenacious, but like the tenacity of a loving parent. Like you really care about your child, so you really want him to learn the alphabet. He wants to go and climb trees, so you need to work with your child rather than letting your tenacity turn into anger or just being, say, forceful and to, in a sense, crush the mind's resistance just with strength. So I feel over the years the best way of describing the most skillful way of training the mind is like a loving parent, that you really care about your child, you really want them to learn how to write or how to read or how to ride a bicycle, and so you stick with it because you care. The child's nature is to be, I want to do this, I want to do that. Yeah. You say, okay, well, we understand that, but this is lesson time, so let's start with an A again. And so that you're like a good parent as soon as a child cries, they say, "What's this? What's all this noise?" I don't want all this noise around the house. They say, "Well, it's a baby. It's a newborn child. They're always crying." That's what babies do. "Oh, I didn't know that. Can I have one that doesn't cry, please?" But you're in the wrong universe. You're asking too much. Your expectations are out of tune with reality, with the way nature works. So to train the mind with that same kind of patience and kindness, but also resolution. These are the kind of terms I was using. But like with guiding a child, you need to be patient, you need to be kind. We say, "Okay, let's try that again. Come on." And so you're working with your mind, you're working with your habits of restlessness, of conceptual proliferation, of lack of focus, and so on. You work with them rather than against them. So it's, this is a naturopathic center. So it's this kind of naturopathic approach to mental training or mental illness. Is you work with the body, you work with the mind, rather than trying to just conquer it or beat it into submission with chemicals. That you can force the mind through sheer will to behave. Like you can make a child be quiet, but they're terrified, or they have all kinds of anger that they're just bottling up, and they're going to explode. So that at least most of the children, my experience with children, if you are able to establish a quality of collaboration, of trust, of empathy, then even if the child is really kind of boisterous and bouncing around all over the place, you still find ways of working together. So there's a little boy who comes to Amaravati in England, and his parents are very generous with him. He's only about 4, and he seems to come in a different superhero suit or supervillain suit every Sunday. So one week he'll be Darth Vader, next week he'll be Spider-Man, next week he'll be Iron Man. And so I don't know where they get all the money from, but he bounces around all over the place. So if you expect Zach to be able to sit still for more than 2 minutes, you're asking too much. Because he's a 4-year-old obsessed with being a superhero or a supervillain. Hasn't quite made his mind up yet. But every so often, then when he's had a good chance to run around and do his little superhero thing at the monastery, then his mother will say, Zach, come on, time to pay respects to the monk. And he'll come up and he'll bow down. It's very interesting having a sort of pocket-sized Darth Vader bowing to you. But if you expect little Zach to sort of sit still and pay attention to a Dhamma talk for half an hour, it's not going to happen. But 15 seconds to pump out 3 quick prostrations before it goes off to save the world again. That's okay.
Regarding walking meditation,
if you hold the microphone closer to your mouth.
Many of us have done the personal courses. Can you keep it near the mouth? Regarding the personal meditation.
Many of us have done Vipassana courses, and
regarding walking meditation. The way I'm going is feeling these sensations on this one area, and as the mind wanders away, then get the attention back to the feet, the sensation of the feet, and so like it is the practice has been seems to be like more of developing concentration. Like the mind wanders away, just accept this, mind has wandered away, and bring back to the attention to the feet area, soul area. And so this is how I have been doing. I have two questions here. One, so that we all know how to deal with the objects on the other sense doors, like the sounds and smells that we encounter during this process. So just observe and come back to the feet, so that I'm going to put the reflection that you see. Because reflection is something which is not to be part of the Vipassana retreat. We just focus on the sensations, we observe this impermanent.
So if I follow your question, first one is, as I was saying, I would focus just on samatha aspect of meditation, so the aspect of concentration, and then tomorrow we'll look more into the vipassana side, the reflections on anicca, dukkha, anatta. So I would explore that aspect of things more tomorrow. So today I thought just to focus on the aspect of concentration. That's quite deliberate. And then, and so when some meditation today, then just regardless of what the other objects might be, say a thing that the person you see walking by, or a sound that you hear, to note that the mind has been, say, the attention has been caught by that sound or that visual object, that thought. That's the mind chasing after a movement, it's chasing after a color, it's chasing after a sound, a thought. To notice that and to respond by letting go and bringing the attention back to the feeling in the feet. So it's a very simple and direct concentration exercise, and that around that, as I was also mentioning, to use that reflection on what can I learn from this? What is this teaching me? Is that what you're asking in terms of reflection?
So what I understand is reflection essentially involves thinking, reflecting on what we are just experiencing.
Yes, so that so the main meditation exercises for today were concentration on the breath and on the footsteps. But then along with that, or say in the other parts of the day, and also as the mind picks up different thoughts or moods or different sensations, different experiences during the course of the day, when you're eating, or you're going to your room, or you're on your way walking to the hall, just to be cultivating that quality of reflection. So the quality of wise reflection, yoniso manasikara, that is one of the conditions for stream entry. Yeah, so people often assume that reflection or thought is somehow some kind of obstruction to the mind. But in the Buddha's teaching, that quality of wise reflection, he points it out as a necessary condition for liberating the mind. So, but the quality of thought and the way thought is used in wise reflection is radically different than just the mental chatter that goes on in the mind, or just ordinary thoughts that get triggered in the mind. So the quality of wise reflection is like a deliberate thinking. It's a bringing the attention to the experience, what you're seeing, feeling, smelling, tasting, touching, different moods that arise in the mind, and exploring them, naming what's there, asking questions about why does the mind get interested in this, or why is it afraid, why does fear arise in relationship to that. So that when wise reflection is being applied, then there's a measured quality, there's a calmness, a peacefulness to it. It's not just the mind chattering away. When we look at our mind's habitual patterns of thinking, then it never really finishes a sentence. It's just one thing, a few words and a few words and a few words and a few words. Just never goes from the beginning to the middle and the end of a sentence, right? At least mine doesn't. But with wise reflection, then the mind is able to think in complete sentences. So it'll pick up something like, oh, this is interesting. I'd never even heard of walking meditation before coming to this retreat, and yet walking meditation is half of what we're doing here. So what does that do to my mind? So there, you've got that will be an example of wise reflection. That you are noticing something that is happening, and you are recognizing that it's something that is, say, a new experience, and you're considering how does this mind judge that? Does it judge that as a good thing or as a bad thing? Does it judge it as something that's confusing or brings up anxiety? Oh, I hope I don't get it wrong. Or does it bring up excitement? Oh, wow, this is a change. That's interesting. So that as a deliberate bringing of the attention to the experience of the present, and using thought to explore the mind's way of holding that, receiving that, and what the mind does in relationship to those perceptions and thoughts and feelings. So the Buddha used the symbol of using wise reflection is like if you've trodden on a thorn. You know what a thorn is? Like a sharp thing from like a rose bush. You've got a thorn in your foot. You can use another thorn to dig out the first thorn. So wise reflection is like using a thorn to dig out another thorn. So you're using thought and a mental formation to create more perspective and to help the mind to detach from other mental formations, beliefs or ideas or opinions or moods. So wise reflection is an extremely important skill. Often with meditation, people relate to thinking as some kind of unwelcome intruder. Like a thought, if there's a thought in the mind, is somehow the meditation. It's not meditation. But just as we can meditate on physical sensation, that's a sense object. Like body consciousness is a sense object. Visual forms like this building, this microphone, the mats. The eye perceives light, the ear perceives sound, the body perceives physical sensations, the mind perceives thoughts. Thought is just another sense object, like physical sensation. So that in the Buddha's teaching, he doesn't make much of a distinction between any of them. The eyes see forms, the ears hear sound, the nose smells odors, the tongue tastes flavors, the body perceives sensations, the mind perceives thoughts, perceives dhammas, mental formations. It's all there in a list of 6. And I'm aware that in the Goenka training, that Vedana gets kind of big prominence, right? Yeah, Vedana is the big thing. But in the Dhamma teachings, it's not singled out for any kind of special treatment, or it's just another kind of pattern of mental experience. That's all. Where it is significant is in its relationship to craving, Vedana, conditioning, tanha, the feeling, conditioning, craving. So it does have a very specific and kind of unique role in that relationship. But in terms of contemplating how the mind works and the field of experience and the way we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and think, it's just one of that whole spectrum of the six senses. That's all. So the faculty of wise, or the capacity for wise reflection, is a skillful use of thought, just as we can have a skillful use of visual objects, or skillful use of sound, or an unskillful, or neutral. So that it's a particular use of thinking and the mind's ability to conceive and recognize patterns. That is a powerful tool for liberating the mind. A few well-placed reflections can save you weeks of dukkha. I've experienced. Does that make sense?
My question is about feeling sleepy and dizziness. So, can feeling sleepy and dizzy sometimes be a good signal, like a signal of progress in meditation?
And being,
particularly during a particular session.
And feeling sleepy be a sign of progress. That would be a first. I've never heard any Dhamma teacher describe sleepiness as a sign of progress. Sometimes when an insight is particularly challenging for the ego, the system will switch off. If you can follow what I mean, that sometimes a particular insight forms. The mind understands something, and the habits of ego and self-view are so threatened. They say, "Okay, shut down, switch off, have a little power cut." Okay, you didn't see that. That never happened. Ignore that. And so that's one small instance, one kind of instance that happens rarely for people. But I don't think that's what you're talking about. Now, normally, dullness is just one of the nivaranas, one of the hindrances, one of the obstacles to samadhi, to meditation. And it's certainly not a sign of progress. It's just a very common experience, particularly if a person's had a very busy life, or they're very active, and so that the mind is kept awake by being fed with activity. And when things go quiet, there's like sitting in a meditation hall. You've got no decisions to make. You haven't got to respond to anyone, and there's nothing exciting happening. So the instinct is like, well, I haven't got to decide anything, I haven't got to fix anything, I haven't got to talk to anybody. Okay, nap time. Yeah, switch off. So that's so dullness is a very common obstacle or challenge for people who have busy minds when they try to meditate, because peace is automatically, the movement towards peace very easily slips into just switching off and going into sleep states. So that the challenge is to find the mind that's both perfectly energized, alert, and peaceful at the same time. And so if you're your feelings, if your alertness is dependent on being busy and stressed and active and full of say responsibilities and such, then when those are not around, it's very hard to arouse the quality of alertness. So it's one of the benefits of say meditation, like mindfulness of breathing or walking meditation. It's really boring, but it's meant to be boring. That's how it works. So that it's then a means of rousing the quality of energy from within yourself. You're not just getting energy from being with interesting people or getting news or watching exciting movies or getting angry with politicians on the TV or something. But you learn how to be energized through your own chitta, your own heart, your own resources.
So, second part of the question is, are there some effective ways to tackle dizziness or lethargy while we are in seated?
Oh, it's a whole. There's a big catalogue. I'm not sure what you mean about dizziness, but because I would say that's a little bit of a different category than just feeling sleepy or dull. But certainly, there are many techniques for working with dullness. One is to pay more attention to your posture and to notice when you're because as soon as you start to get sleepy, your body will sag. So there's one common technique that people would use in the monasteries. I haven't got a matchbox here. So here we are. So you take some small object, like this little coaster, and getting over the feeling of embarrassment, you put this on the top of your head. So even though you look stupid to your friends, don't worry about that. So then when you start to get sleepy, it falls off. If you want to use the embarrassment, if you want to crank up the embarrassment factor, use a box of matches so everyone will know when they hear the matchbox. Oh, the matchbox guy, he's nodded off again. So you offset your sleepiness. You use your vanity to help you work against your sleepiness. Because dullness, it works like sleep. It works in cycles. So if you can stop the mind going into it, then if you can prevent the mind kind of getting into the sleep state just right at the very beginning, then it's much easier to stay alert. Once the mind's already in a dull state, it's already hard to. You don't really have the resources to notice that you're sleepy. You might think, oh, meditation's going really well, I'm really peaceful. What's that sound? And you realize, oh, what's that funny sensation? That sensation is my nose on my chest, or my head on the floor. So that another way you can do it, again, to take a small object and you put it in your hands, if you can see. So if you hold your hands in your lap and you have an object like a matchbox or just a match, and you hold it between your thumbs, like that, so in your lap. And so then again, when you start to get sleepy, then your thumbs drop. And so then they won't hear you. So it's a bit more kind of discreet. But if you, because the fingertips are very sensitive, so even if a matchstick drops on the fingertips, then you'll notice it. And if you've already set that up, so you can, again, you can notice as the mind starts to drift into dullness, then you have a little signal. So it's, okay, wake up, you're drifting. Because one of the problems is that sleep feels very much like peace. And we're concentrating the mind to develop peace, but not to be sleepy. So it's like when you're driving along the road and you come to a fork, where there's an off ramp. It's like you find you've taken the off ramp. Oh, I didn't mean to take that turn. But But you've already left the motorway already. You're down the slip road before you realise, if you follow that analogy. So another I could stay here all evening giving you techniques. So another method is to sit with your eyes open, and rather than using the breath as a meditation object, you can use something like the Buddha image. And you focus on an object, and then when you start to get sleepy, then a single object will start to drift apart, and you'll get two objects, assuming you've got both eyes working. So that as the mind gets sleepy, then the vision blurs and the object will separate. Or you can just use the back of the head of somebody sitting in front of you, if it's a bit closer. Or you can use that in combination with the breath, like you're following the breath, but your eyes are open, and what you're watching is the back of that person's head, or you're looking at the outline of the Buddha image. And then, as you notice, there's one Buddha's become two. Then you okay, I'm drifting again. There's a famous instance in the suttas where Mahamoggallana, before his enlightenment, is sitting meditating, and he starts to get sleepy, and the Buddha appears in front of him and says, are you nodding, Moggallana? Are you sleeping? So not all of us can have the Buddha appear in front of us and wake us up, but that gave Mahamoggallana great encouragement, that the Buddha would have noticed that he was drifting and came to give him advice. And then the advice he gives Moggallana also is to use various different ways to develop alertness. Most of those involve sort of either getting up and walking around, or washing your face in water, or pulling on your ears. Apparently that helps to brighten the mind. And but there are many and various techniques, and my own teacher, Ajahn, he would say, if you try all of that, you've tried to sit up straight, you tried to do some, you tried to sort of sit with a matchbox on your head, or you've gone outside and walked in the cool air and looked at the stars, or you've been putting on your ears and washing your face in cold water, and none of that works. Go and have a rest. Because again, we're not the owners of our bodies. We're not in total control. So sometimes the system is just really weary, and there's no thing that can be done to take that sleepiness away than just having a nap and letting that sleep cycle happen. Any more from this side?
I'm waiting for the mic.
Oh, thanks. There's one here.
So, when you are observing your respiration, your breath, or while you're observing the sole of your feet, there is a situation where you observe the breath, and there is a thought that is also going at the same time. I mean, what should the state be? You can observe both of them, so should the idea be that you should try to get rid of the thought and get back to respiration and the sensation of the foot, or let the thought continue, or what would be the ideal state? That's my question number one. And question number two is the reflection on the thoughts that you said. Now, when a thought has arisen in the mind, and when you will go and reflect on it, it's already in the past. Is that also good? Should you do that, or I just wanted a little clarification on these two issues.
Okay, very good. So the first one, it really depends on what kind of intention you have with the meditation. So as I was saying today, the emphasis was really just on a very simple, straightforward samatha kind of concentration. So that's really designed to help key the attention into the present. And once the mind is quite settled and is not getting caught up by extraneous objects and thoughts and such like, that the attention can rest easily with the present reality, then there's no need to fix the attention on a single object like the breath. So tomorrow in our meditation, I was thinking to do more of that meditation that is not, say, centered on a particular object, but it has a broader focus. So in that respect, so if you find that the attention is quite steady and doesn't wander from the present off into fantasies or memories or plans or whatever, then even as you're paying attention to the breath, and if a thought comes and goes, then it's no problem. Just like I can see you and I can talk at the same time. Seeing you it's not as though I have to shut my eyes in order to be able to talk, and then when I finish the sentence, open my eyes, and there you are again. I can see you and talk at the same time. So in the same way, we can observe the breath, and the thought can come and go. It's like a bird can fly past the window. There's nothing that is intrinsically bad or wrong about that. If the attention is not very well grounded and the mind is easily distracted, then the power of that thought to carry the attention away will be much stronger. So the point of the keeping a focus on a single object is to help strengthen that quality of the attention being grounded in the present. So one image I often use, I know Delhi is way inland, but one simile I often use is like you use a meditation object like the footsteps or like the mindfulness of breathing. Or you can use many different objects that you can choose. But it's like an anchor. If you have a boat, a little dinghy, a little boat, and it's out in the water, it's being pulled by the tides, it's blown by the wind, it's got the currents flowing through the sea as well. So there are all kinds of forces pulling on that little boat. And so it needs an anchor to hold it in place. No? If it hasn't got an anchor, then your boat will just get blown out to sea or smashed up against the pier, or you'll never see it again. So if you want to have some stability, then you need an anchor. So the concentration on the footsteps or the concentration on the breath is serving the purpose of being that kind of an anchor. If the attention is already very well grounded in the present, and that quality of concentration and mindful awareness is very strong, it's like the boat is already pulled up onto the beach. So the wind can blow and the currents can pull and the tide can come and go, but the boat is happily up on the shore. It's not, whatever the water does, whatever the sea does, it's not bothered by that. So for someone who's an experienced practitioner or who has a well-established quality of mindfulness and concentration, then it's like their boat is up on the shore. They don't have to worry about it being blown this way and that. So it's not a perfect analogy, but it's that's the one way of describing it. So that for the exercise of today, I would say to be just bringing attention to the breath, and if a thought arises then and appears, then to let it go by and just bring the attention back to the breathing again. And this as an experiment and as a way of training the mind. do it that way. And your second question was about, if you're reflecting on a thought, it's already gone. Yes. Well, that's say, in a way that's often, in a way, always the case with a thought, because it's so transient. It's not the same with the mind relating to a sound. It might be in a state of change, but it's still there. Or a sensation in the body, or a visual object that I can still look at you, and I can reflect on my experience of seeing you. So thoughts are particularly fleeting, but we can still, even though you're relating to a memory of that, maybe you suddenly had a thought about your brother, and maybe I don't know if you have a brother, but maybe some thought of your brother arises, and it's a thought of great affection, or a thought of compassion. I really feel sorry for him, he's really in trouble. I'm just making this up. So that, in that moment, then you've noticed, there's this wave of thought about your brother, and this feeling of compassion or worry arising in yourself. So then, even though that thought has arisen and you've spotted, that was, my mind has been getting worried about my brother, I feel really sorry for him. And so then the act of wise reflection would be, that thought is gone, but you remember that it came up in the wave of feeling of anxiety, concern for his welfare. So, where's that coming from? I haven't thought of him for a month, and suddenly it's come to my mind, and I'm suddenly feeling very concerned. What triggered that, or where does that come from? And so that you're working with a memory, but that's good enough.
There's no harm in that.
No, absolutely not. No, it can be very useful.
And that's also meditating. Would you call that meditating, or would you call that?
Yeah, I would call that meditating. I mean, just because the mind is thinking, it doesn't mean to say that you're not meditating. It's like the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree for 7 weeks after the enlightenment was reflecting on dependent origination for 7 weeks. That's a lot of thinking. He sat for a week under each of the trees and reflecting on avijja paccaya sankhara, sankhara paccaya vijnana, and so on. So that's 7 weeks of reflection, and he was certainly meditating. He was sitting without moving for 7 days. I call that meditating. But in that, there's an active exploration. If you follow the accounts in the suttas, that he was actively exploring the nature of dependent origination and its arising and its ceasing, and its arising and ceasing modes for 7 weeks, and sitting without moving for a week at a time. So that's a particularly extreme example, but it's also that it's using thought in a very particular way, because meditation is it's not just the mind wandering or calculating something. It's not just thinking, but the mind aware that it's thinking. So it's like you can see, but you can also be aware that you're seeing. You can taste, but you can be aware that you're tasting, right? So in the same way, with meditation and using thought as a supportive quality in meditation, it's the active use of thought, but it's thought that's applied deliberately. And with another aspect of wise reflection, not only do you think in whole sentences, but there's spaces between the sentences. So that if you say, this is interesting, and suddenly I'm thinking about my brother and these feelings of concern. What's that about? Pause. maybe it was that pop song that I heard on the radio in the taxi. And my brother used to really like that. That's it. I was reminded by that song. That made me think of my brother. And then thinking of my brother and how things were so good for him and now he's really in trouble. And then that feeling of compassion arose. And what else does that say to me? Pause. It says to me that I've been totally distracted for the last month, and no thought of my brother crossed my mind. And so you're using thought, you're exploring your experience, but it's measured. There's a spaciousness there.
What's in that pause period? During that pause area, what if another thought crops in?
Well, if it's wise reflection, then it won't. If it's just the mind chattering, then it will.
Yes.
So with wise reflection, yoniso manasikara. And also the other quality that's very, very similar to it is called dhamma vichaya, which means investigation of reality. They're pretty much synonymous. So that's when the mind is using wise reflection, then there'll always be that like a spacious quality, that there isn't a kind of background chatter going on. It's the only thing that the mind is thinking of. But our habits with thinking are usually very sloppy for most of us. And so that for most people in meditation, thought is like an irritating intruder, like sitting next to a pond with a lot of mosquitoes. It's like, they're everywhere. Your thoughts kind of go like endless mosquito attacks. And so that and certainly my experience with beginning meditation nearly 40 years ago was if it would just shut up, I would be happy. You just shut up. And I was staying in the monastery and doing meditation hours and hours every day, and I didn't experience a moment of real mental quietness for about the first year and a half. And then when finally my mind went quiet, it was because I was exhausted actually. I'd been up for 2 nights in a row. So physical exhaustion was quite helpful. I wasn't sleepy, but I was just sitting there and I suddenly realized it stopped. It was my first experience of mental quietness ever, as far as I can remember. And this is great. But then we can, so because our mental habits are so sloppy and untidy, then we tend to think of thought as an unwelcome intruder, like mosquitoes. You don't want any way that it's not around is good. And we think of thinking as a kind of brain disease. And if we could just stop thinking, we'd be happy. But again, as Ajahn Chah would often say, these forest chickens, they don't do a lot of thinking, but they're not enlightened. The concrete that this kuti is built on, the concrete doesn't do much thinking, but it's not liberated. So that it's not a matter of worshipping the act of not thinking, but rather learning how to think when you want to think and to not think when you don't want to think. Which we can do. Which we can develop that skill.
I mean, I'm yet on the stage to telling them to shut up. So, when you are in the shut up stage, and the idea has been that when you have that chatter in the mind, when the chatter is in the mind, the presumption was that the whole idea of meditation was that the chatter stops and you are only focused on the point of your concentration, like your breath or the chatter is going on. So would you say that if the chatter is going on, you shouldn't try to suppress it or try to let it go, just observe both of them together and let the chatter pass by itself?
No, I would say that, as I was saying today, that what I found really helpful was when my mind was incessantly chattering, was to be very, very intent in the meditation, just to focus on the breath, and whenever the mind wandered into thought, to let it go and come back to the breath, let it go, come back to the breath. Because as soon as I gave the thinking much room to maneuver, it would just take over, and my mind would get lost. So at the beginning I found it was really helpful that regardless of how interesting, how important, how worrying, how significant, leave it. Go back to the breath, go back to the breath, go back to the breath. And then, but after doing that for a few years, and then also not creating the causes of more mental agitation, you're living a quiet life, living by the precepts, we're living in a harmless way, not creating the causes of mental agitation, then slowly it all calmed down. And so then after about, say, 3 or 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years, then I found I was much more able to think if I wanted to think and not think if I didn't want to think. So that that period, that era of sort of incessant chatter, it was through patience and application and also not creating the causes of mental agitation by the way I interact with people or the things that I do, or just seeing that mental activity has an origin. It doesn't just happen on its own. So if you stop creating the causes, the effects will stop as well. And so obviously living a monastic life helps a great deal. If you have a busy family life and business, or you're running a university department, then there's a lot of thought and verbiage, words involved in that. But I would say that the skill of being able to focus the attention on the present moment is the most important thing. So that I'll probably talk a little bit more about this as we go along. But a part of it is also not feeling you have to dismiss thought altogether. I mean, it is good to be focusing just on the breath or the footsteps to establish a disengagement from thought. But what also helps is to not be so interested in the content of your thoughts. So that often a lot of the difficulty with thinking is that we take it for granted that if I'm thinking something, it's absolutely true. Even if what I think now is different from what I thought a year ago, I was right then and I'm right now. Even if they're different, they're opposite. So we tend to assume that if I think it, it's true. And so part of the meditation and the reflection on thought is to develop that, in a sense of doubt in the content of your own thinking. And taking a little phrase like, just because I think it, it doesn't mean it's true. You could use that as a bumper sticker, or have it on a t-shirt. Just because I think it, it doesn't mean it's true. And to develop the attitude towards thought. Again, speaking about attitude is another of the things that I was going to speak about. It's just like we hear the birds in the trees and they have their conversations, but that you don't know what the meaning is. It doesn't have any value for you. Or I was just noticing today, hearing the people who work here at the Balaji Center talking in Hindi. I don't understand Hindi. It's got no meaning for me. One word here or there, but mostly it has no meaning. So I have no idea what the discussions are about, or the local politics, or what the manager just said that was so stupid or was so encouraging. I have no idea. So we can relate to our own thoughts, just like the sound of the birds. Or one other example I often use is listening to, if you're if you're in a departure lounge in a airport, they have a TV going. You didn't choose the channel. You're not interested in the content, but it's there. Yeah, and you can see the words kind of going across the screen. You don't really care. You didn't choose it, but it's having an impact. The words have a meaning. So that we can relate to our own thoughts in that same kind of a way. They're there, but we don't have to make much of them. We don't have to give them value or meaning. We don't have to imbue them with meaning. And we can just relate to it like the chattering of the birds. I don't know if in India you have the Charlie Brown Peanuts cartoon strip.
A little bit.
Yeah.
They're not very well.
Not very much. So in the Charlie Brown world, only children and animals have meaningful things to say. If an adult ever appears in the cartoon strip, all they ever say is gak, 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 gak.
Okay.
So no adult ever has any meaningful thing to say in that universe. So to disempower your thoughts and to get more objectivity on them, you can just sort of, in terms of reflecting on them, you can just, so as it were, mentally turn towards them and say, gag, 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 gag. It's just the mind, the thinking mind doing its thing. But I noticed the time has already gone past. It's already 5:40, so let's have a break. I'm sure there's many, many more questions. We can save them up for tomorrow. But have a break now, and then we gather back together at 6:30. Very good. Thank you for your good questions. And thank you for the more subtle lighting rather than the...
of Anish, in fact. He's the supplier.
Oh, very good.